Laughter rolled through the checkpoint like distant thunder. "Nice backpack," one soldier scoffed. "Did she pull that out of dumpster?" Another chuckled. "She thinks she's walking into a charity shelter?" Rachel Carter said nothing. Her shoulders were low, her coat faded, and her left hand trembled as she clutched the frayed strap of her torn pack. She stepped through the gate slowly, ignoring the eyes crawling over her like insects. A sergeant blocked her path. "Bag. Now." She didn't move fast enough. 2 guards grabbed it off her shoulder and dropped it with a thud. Zippers split. They tore it open like scavengers, snatching out old gloves, a broken compass, and a faded photo of a squad no one recognized. Then something slid free from a false lining and clattered to the ground. A combat knife. Old. Blackened. Serrated. No military stamp, just a faint, ghosted serial number on the hilt. Half erased. Half classified. The laughter stopped. The sergeant froze, his mouth parting slightly. The blade was unmistakable to those who knew. A commander pushed through the crowd, stared at it, then at her. "That knife, no one was supposed to come back with it," he murmured. "Not after Hollow Tide." Someone whispered, "That unit was wiped out. She's not in any file." Rachel met his eyes. "I was never supposed to be in a file," she said quietly, "but I remember every name on that blade." Soldiers stood around lazily, rifles slung across their shoulders, waiting for something to break the monotony of the afternoon. Then came the sound of slow footsteps. A woman approached, alone, moving through the dust and silence. Her coat was faded. Her boots were worn, but it was her backpack that caught every eye. The strap was barely hanging on. The zipper was broken, held shut with twine and an old safety pin. Private Mason squinted. "Hey, are we letting the homeless through the gate now?" Privately chuckled. "She think this is a military base or a soup kitchen?" "She's limping," another added. "Probably twisted her ankle climbing out of a trash bin." Rachel Carter didn't respond. She kept walking, head lowered, eyes calm. Her left hand trembled slightly as it clutched the broken strap of her backpack. A sergeant stepped forward and blocked her path. "Stop." Rachel froze. Name and purpose? She lifted her head slightly. Her voice was soft. "Rachel Carter. I need to speak to Commander Rourke." The sergeant raised an eyebrow. He smirked. "Commander Rourke? That's funny. He doesn't do walk-ins. You think you're special?" Rachel didn't answer. Behind the gate, more soldiers gathered. "Someone tell her career day is over." One said, "I've seen supply crates in better condition than that bag." "She thinks she's from some secret op?" Another laughed. "She looks like she came from a soup line." "Maybe she's lost," someone called out. "Poor thing. Should we give her a map? Or a sandwich?" Rachel stood still. A gust of wind tugged at her coat. The sergeant grew impatient. "Bag." She hesitated. "I said give me the damn bag." Her fingers loosened. The backpack slipped off her shoulder and hit the ground with a dull thud. The sergeant motioned to 2 guards. They pounced on it like vultures. Zippers tore. Stitching snapped. Inside were a few personal items. A cracked compass. An old water-stained notebook. A black and white photo of 5 soldiers in mismatched gear. The guards laughed. "What is this, a time capsule? Look at this junk. Bet half of it doesn't even work." "This notebook's probably her diary," someone snorted. "Let's read about her crush." They kept digging, and tearing, and laughing, until something slid from the false bottom. It hit the table with a heavy metallic sound. Silence fell. The laughter stopped. All eyes turned to the object. A combat knife. Dark. Worn. Deadly. No insignia. Just a partially erased serial number on the hilt. The sergeant took a step back. What the hell is that? No one answered. A soldier leaned in slowly, then pulled away. His voice was lower now. That design is not standard issue. It's not just old, someone whispered. It's erased. Another soldier stiffened. I saw a photo of a knife like that once. In a briefing on Hollow Tide, murmurs spread like wildfire. That mission was blacklisted. There were no survivors. They said the unit was wiped, gone. Rachel slowly picked up the knife. She wiped it clean with her sleeve. Someone whispered, "She can't be." The checkpoint gate buzzed open. Heavy boots echoed. Commander Elijah Rourke stepped through the opening. He stopped in front of the table. His eyes locked onto the blade. Everything else faded. His face paled. His voice cracked. "Where did you get this?" Rachel looked up. "Captain Dwyer gave it to me." "That's impossible," Rourke said. "He died in Hollow Tide." She nodded. "I know. You weren't on the manifest." "I wasn't supposed to be." He stared at her like she wasn't real, like she was a ghost. But no one survived. "There was one," she said softly. Private Mason stepped back. The sergeant's jaw clenched. The knife sat between them like it carried 1,000 ghosts. Rourke whispered, "Who are you?" Rachel reached into her coat pocket. She placed a photo on the table. It was recent. A group of soldiers standing outside a black tent. One of them wore a patch that should not exist. A Hollow Tide insignia. Rourke's breath caught. This was taken last week." Rachel nodded. "They're back." He looked up at her slowly. His voice shook. "What do you mean, they?" She stared straight into his eyes. "I mean, Hollow Tide never ended." The room fell into silence, but Rachel's words echoed in Rourke's mind like a grenade without a pin. Hollow Tide never ended. He stared at the photo on the table. Crisp, recent, damning. The soldiers in the image wore today's gear, stood beside vehicles with this year's model numbers. Yet one of them wore a patch that hadn't existed officially for 7 years. A black tied line, 3 bars slashed through it. The insignia of a mission that had never been publicly named, only whispered in restricted hallways by men who knew what it cost. Rachel remained still, the knife resting beside her torn backpack, untouched. The very image of a woman who'd been through hell and hadn't come back by accident. "How long have you known?" Rourke asked finally. Rachel's voice was low, steady. 6 weeks. I started noticing patterns in the broadcast signals. Scrambled frequencies. Same codes we used during the Hollow Tide operation. Then came sightings. Symbols. Quiet movements on dead channels. Places going dark. You didn't report it? No one would have believed me. He couldn't argue with that. Until 10 minutes ago, he hadn't even believed she existed. Rourke stepped back and pressed a button on the wall console. The overhead lights dimmed. A secure panel opened with a beep, revealing a second layer of control, one that wasn't meant to be used in peacetime. "Seal the room," he ordered. 2 guards outside the glass looked up in surprise, but obeyed without question. The heavy doors hissed shut. Interior locks clicked into place. Rachel didn't flinch. "You want to tell me what's really happening?" Rourke said. She nodded. "I thought Hollow Tide was an extraction mission," she began. "That's what we were told. A small team, no insignia, no files. We dropped into a ghost village in Sector Echo 9. No civilians. Just silence. Radio black. No echo returns on surveillance. Drones failed on entry. I remember the satellite feed," Rourke said. "It went out 90 seconds after deployment." Rachel gave a bitter smile. "That's because something took them out." Rourke blinked. "What do you mean, something?" Rachel hesitated. "We didn't understand it then. But whatever we were sent to retrieve, it wasn't just data. It wasn't even a person. It was a weapon, a prototype, a presence. She opened her notebook and placed it on the table. Inside were sketches, diagrams, some hand-drawn, others pieced together from captured screenshots and decoded logs. One image showed a circular structure buried under rock. Another showed twisted symbols carved into metal. This was buried beneath the village, she said. Half machine, half organic. It emitted signals we couldn't trace. But every time someone got near it, something changed in them. What kind of changes? Her hand hovered over the page. They stopped following orders. They moved in silence. They started hearing things. Commands that didn't come from our channel. Rourke's throat tightened. You're saying the team was compromised? Rachel nodded once. One by one. We didn't notice at first. Small things. Hesitation. Sudden focus. Then came the killings. She paused. I ran, not to survive, but to record. I got out because Captain Dwyer threw himself into the trench to block the signal. He gave me 3 minutes. Her voice cracked but didn't break. I've spent the last 7 years off the grid, watching, waiting. I thought the project died with us. But now it's active again. Yes, she whispered. And whoever's reactivated it, they're doing it from inside. Rourke stepped back from the table. We shut down everything related to Hollow Tide. All files purged. Survivors marked Kia. That entire mission was erased under Echo Protocol. Rachel met his eyes. You think they didn't want it erased on purpose? He didn't answer. A knock came at the sealed door. Rourke walked to the console and unlocked it slightly. Colonel Reeves stepped in, tall and clean-cut, his tone cold. Commander, Reeves said, eyes flicking to Rachel. I just received a flag from Checkpoint 3. You cleared the civilian without proper authorization. She's not a civilian, Rourke said flatly. Then where's her record? There isn't one. She was embedded in Operation Hollow Tide. Reeves narrowed his eyes. Hollow Tide was classified and sealed. I'm aware. Reeves stared at the knife, the photo, and finally at Rachel. Even if she was part of it, she's a risk now. You know protocol. No ID. No current orders. She doesn't belong here. She belongs more than you think, Rourke said. Rachel stood slowly. Colonel, I suggest you step back from the desk. His lip curled. Excuse me. She stepped forward, reached into her coat, and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She unfolded it. Inside was a data chip, black, triangular, military-coded, with a blinking red core. Rourke gasped. That's Spectre Clearance Level 1. Rachel nodded. Captain Dwyer gave it to me the moment he saw what they were experimenting with. That kind of chip connects directly to buried archives, Rourke said. The kind that don't exist on any grid. Reeves' tone darkened. You had this the whole time? Why now? Because someone else has activated their chip too, Rachel replied. And their signal just pinged. A long pause followed. Where? Rachel looked up slowly. Inside this base. The tension cracked like a whip. Rourke stiffened. Reeves stared. You're saying someone on this base, someone here, is connected to Hollow Tide's reactivation? Rachel placed the chip on the console. It beeped. The room lights flickered briefly. Coordinates appeared on the screen. Sector 4C, lower labs. Rourke's stomach dropped. That sector's been sealed for years. No, Commander, Rachel said. It's been hidden, not sealed. Reeves moved toward the screen. This is impossible. No one has clearance to even access. Another beep interrupted him. A second ping, followed by a third, and then a fourth. Red dots appeared on the screen, all within the base perimeter. Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. They're waking up. Rourke looked at her. Who? She didn't blink. The ones who made it back. A sudden explosion rocked the floor. The lights cut out. The emergency alarm blared red through the compound. Sirens screamed across the intercom. Security burst through the outer doors. Commander, breach in Sector 4C. Unidentified personnel, armed, moving toward the west wing. Rourke's face drained of color. Rachel turned toward the door and picked up her knife. She slipped it back into its sheath with calm precision. She looked over her shoulder. You want the truth, Commander? Rourke nodded. Then come with me. I'll show you what Hollow Tide really was. The emergency sirens howled like die machines. Soldiers raced past corridors, rifles raised, boots pounding against steel floors. Red lights flashed like warnings from hell itself. Commander Rourke followed Rachel down the stairs of Fort Talon's restricted wing, 2 armed guards trailing behind. Every level deeper brought colder air, thicker silence. Sector 4C was no longer sealed. It was open, unlocked from inside. What exactly are we walking into? Rourke asked. Rachel didn't look back. Not what? Who? The walls here were unmarked. No designations. No signs. Just cold concrete and the hum of buried power. At the bottom of the stairs, a blast door stood ajar, its locking bolts twisted from the inside. One of the guards whispered, What could do that from inside? Rachel answered without turning. Something that was never meant to wake up. Inside, Sector 4C was pitch black. They moved through slowly, flashlights cutting across long-forgotten tech, shelves of decayed files, crates marked with scratched-out serials. A glass case shattered on the floor, empty. What was in here? Rourke asked. Rachel finally stopped walking. She turned to him. This is where they brought it after Hollow Tide. Rourke froze. The weapon? No, she said. The thing we tried to extract. The room suddenly felt smaller. Airless. She reached into her coat and pulled out the chip again. It's more than just data. This chip doesn't store intel, it connects. She tapped a console on the wall, and a flicker of electricity surged through dead screens. One monitor came to life. A static image appeared. A body, floating in a tank. Human in shape, but wrong in form. Veins darkened. Eyes sealed shut. Skin like carbon fiber. Rourke stepped back. What is that? Rachel's eyes didn't move from the screen. It was a human once. That's all I know. A scout, dispatched years before Hollow Tide ever began. He was one of ours. Yes. And now, he doesn't breathe there anymore. The image cut out. The lights went black. A hum echoed from deep within the chamber. Something alive. Something waking. Rachel raised her voice. Weapons ready. One of the guards raised his rifle. Ma'am, are we expecting hostiles? No, she said. We're standing in their nest. A sudden metallic clang rang out in the dark, followed by a sharp screech of steel dragging across concrete. Then silence. The first guard stepped forward, flashlight high. Then he stopped, dead in his tracks. Something moved in the light. Fast. Too fast. A blur. A shadow. Then a scream. The guard flew backward into the wall. Body lifeless. Throat cut with surgical precision. The second guard screamed and opened fire. Muzzle flashes lit the dark like strobe lightning. No target. Nothing hit. Just a sound of movement, like feet that never touched the floor. Rourke shouted, Fall back. Go now. Rachel didn't move. Her hand slowly reached for her combat knife. She whispered to herself, It followed me back. What? Rourke snapped. What are you talking about? But her eyes were locked on the ceiling above them. And then, like a creature peeled from darkness, It dropped. Tall, human-shaped, but hollow, its limbs unnaturally long, its body covered in black armor fused to flesh. A twisted version of a soldier, made from silence and hatred. Its eyes opened. Pitch black. Empty. Rourke froze. Rachel didn't. She lunged, knife flashing. It ducked, moved like liquid shadow. Rachel turned her momentum into a roll and came up behind it. She slashed at its spine. Sparks flew. It roared, a sound like broken glass grinding against metal. Rourke pulled his sidearm and fired. 2 shots, then 3. It flinched, only flinched, not injured, just annoyed. It grabbed him by the collar and threw him into a steel cabinet. Rachel screamed, "Stay down!" She reached into her bag and pulled a flare, lit it, shoved it into the creature's shoulder. It screamed again, this time not in pain, but rage. It turned and vanished back into the dark. Gone. The flare spun on the floor, lighting Rachel's face in red and orange. Rourke coughed from the ground. "You said it followed you back." Rachel nodded, breathing hard. There were 5 of us left at the end. Hollow Tide didn't just fail. It changed us. "You mean that thing used to be—" "Yes." She knelt beside him. "That's why I stayed hidden. Because I didn't know if I'd changed too. And now," her eyes were wet but clear, "now I know I didn't. Because it didn't kill me. It wants me to see what it's become." Another explosion rocked the base. More screams echoed from above. A soldier's voice over the comms crackled. "They're inside. Unknown hostiles, non-human. We're losing sectors fast." Rourke stood up, bleeding from his lip. "We need to evacuate." Rachel shook her head. "If we do that, they'll spread." "Then what do we do?" She looked at the flare dying on the floor. "We go down." "Down where?" She pointed to a sealed grate in the floor behind the tank casing, where they stored the original signal device, the one that started all this. "We shut it off, or none of us leave." Rourke stared at her, shocked. "You really think that'll stop them?" "I don't know, but I'm not leaving until I try." The room flickered again. In the red glow of the emergency light, Rourke saw something he hadn't noticed before, Rachel's shadow. It moved half a second slower than she did, as if it wasn't hers anymore, as if it had learned to mimic her, but forgot how to sink. His blood ran cold. He didn't say anything. Not yet, because if he was right, the real war hadn't even started. And Rachel Carter might not be the only one who made it out of Hollow Tide. No turning back. The metal grate screeched as Rachel pried it open. A gust of cold, metallic air rushed upward from the depths beneath the base. Commander Rourke stared into the dark, jaw clenched, bruises fresh on his face. "We're going in there without backup?" Rachel wiped blood from her cheek and answered flatly, "We are the backup." She dropped down first. The shaft was narrow, just wide enough for a soldier with a rifle. Rusted pipes lined the walls. The sound of their boots echoed downward like fading memories. They reached the service tunnel. The walls were damp. Mold crept up the corners. Power cables dangled like dead vines. A low-frequency hum grew louder with every step they took. Not mechanical, not human, alive. Rourke slowed, rifle raised. This tunnel wasn't on any base schematic. Rachel didn't look back, because it predates the base. "What do you mean?" She stopped at a massive blast door etched with symbols not written in any known language. Her voice dropped. "This isn't a military chamber. It's pre-military." Rourke stared. Rachel placed her hand on the door surface. It lit up faintly, responding to her. "During Hollow Tide," she said, "we weren't deployed to attack anything." Rourke frowned. "Then what?" She turned. "We were sent to retrieve what was already found. The blast door creaked and began to open. Beyond it was a cavern, not made by machines, carved by something older. In the center stood a massive, spire-like device, twisting with geometry that didn't make sense. Wires extended from it like nerves, and suspended above it all, trapped in a cocoon of black crystal, was a creature they had fought earlier, the hollow soldier. It hovered, motionless. Rachel whispered, "That's not a man anymore." Rourke stepped in beside her. "Then what is it?" "The first recipient of this." She pointed to the device. Rourke squinted. "You're saying this thing created him?" "Not created," Rachel said. "It broadcasted. A signal. Something no one could translate. It didn't tell us what to do. It changed how we think, how we feel, how we perceive pain." Rourke slowly lowered his weapon. "You were exposed." Rachel nodded. "4 of us were sent to retrieve this. 2 of us died on impact. 1 went missing." She stared at the cocoon. "And the last became that. And you?" She looked him dead in the eye. "I destroyed the uplink. I buried the signal. And I swore to vanish, so they'd never try again. But they did." Rachel's silence confirmed it. The lights in the chamber flickered. And then the cocoon cracked. The creature opened its eyes. It floated downward slowly, limbs unfolding like blades made of silence. Rourke raised his weapon. "We can't let it leave this room." "No," Rachel said. "We can't let us leave this room." Before he could react, she rushed toward the spire. "Rachel, what are you—" She pulled the chip from her jacket, the one they had taken from her backpack. It began to glow. The spire pulsed. The creature screamed, twitching violently in midair. Rachel jammed the chip into the central socket. The entire room shifted. Gravity warped. Sound cracked. Reality bent. Rourke fell to his knees. Rachel gritted her teeth and screamed through the distortion. "This is the kill switch." The spire exploded in light. The creature let out a sound like every scream humanity had ever choked back. Its limbs shattered. Its body convulsed. And then silence. Just silence. Everything stopped. The light faded. The spire was gone. So was the creature. Rourke slowly sat up, blinking. "Rachel?" She was still standing. Barely. Blood trickled from her nose. Her shadow finally moved with her again. She looked down at her shaking hands. "It's over." Rourke stood. "You shut it down?" She nodded. "The signal. The tech. The link between mind and metal. It's all gone." "What now?" Rachel turned to the tunnel. "We seal it." Later, above ground, the base was silent. The fires extinguished. The breach neutralized. Soldiers wandered in stunned silence, like survivors of forgotten war. Rourke stood outside the gates as Rachel walked away, her torn backpack slung over her shoulder again. No medals, no speech, just silence. "Carter," he called. She turned. He saluted. "I read the file on Holotide." She paused. "I'm sorry." Rachel nodded once, then turned away. As she disappeared down the long road from the base, a young private approached Rourke. "Sir, was she part of some Black Ops team?" Rourke took a breath. "No." He looked up at the sky. "She was the only one who made it back human.